Well, thank you for staying with us. And as we kickstart our big stories, we're definitely looking at a bread and butter issue, a matter that affects all of us. We're talking about fuel price increments. Now, the latest increment slated for today has got many people talking, many tongues wagging. We get into that conversation this morning with our guests who join the conversation. We have Duncan Amwa, Executive Director of COPEC. He joins the conversation. Mr. Amwa, a very good morning to you, sir.
A pleasant morning and a good morning to your viewers as well. Good morning.
Right. Later on, we'll be joined by a rep from the NPA as well as we get into this conversation. But I guess like we say here, maybe we have to give you your stone because you've been saying, from the start of the year, my interactions with you, January, February, March, April, consistently, that the fuel prices will keep escalating, especially on the back of the tax mix that we have on the fuel products. And that exactly is panning out. But how do you respond to this latest increment as we have it? 11+% on diesel, about 13% on petrol.
Good morning once again, my brother. I think to some of our carpets, it is very disappointing, but not surprising. Not surprising because it's been foretold, like you mentioned earlier, that safety nets are all down currently. A price taker position is where we find ourselves. You also find your local currency not that stable to help withstand whatever shocks you even record on the international market. And then your safety nets, like I mentioned, are simply non-functional as we speak. So whatever little impact that the world market throws at us, would have to pass it on to the average Ghanaian going about his normal work. It is not a very good position we find ourselves, but the reality is that we are not out of the woods, and it doesn't look as though we are equally planning or even strategizing to halt these increases, which continue to simply drain our pockets.
Right. So very quickly, just to interject, you're saying basically that leadership is failing because you're saying we've not shown any signs of strategizing or putting in place any real policy measures that would bring us out of the woods. So you're basically saying, and you also say in another breath that the least shocks from what is happening in Russia and Ukraine, and we also have to react. In other words, we're sitting ducks. Each time there is an exposure, we will get caught.
Yes, you do a very good summary there. There's some leadership failing presently. Leadership failing in the sense that you cannot do the same thing and expect different results. We have not tweaked anything. We have left the system to, as though it were on a certain autopilot basis, and so whatever happens, happens. You recall not long ago, there was an intervention which Seaboard had requested for and which Bank of Ghana had, decided to work with, making available the forex. Per our checks, what the Bank of Ghana has even been advancing to the importers is a little under 20% or 25% of what their actual needs are, where you probably find some $50 million or so advanced to them every fortnight, whereas their requirement sits within the range of some 200, 250 every fortnight. Clearly, the little intervention that we even made has become unsustainable, or is something that really cannot even deal with, the currency depreciating bit. Mind you, we also have the other safety nets that I did mention, which should have contributed to Ghanaian overall well-being, but clearly they either have lost focus or non-functional. You talk of the thermal oil refinery who, if were actually tolling or processing crude for the Ghanaian market to simply buy, you might not need every BDC going to the forex market to now source for dollar to pay their suppliers, because they probably could have gotten some product from the refinery. That is not contributing a liter to all of us. Mind you, you are still paying 3% every liter of fuel you buy towards a toll that has simply been grounded. And then you also have a boss.
But is that not because we want to revive TOR as well? I mean, how do we revive it if we don't contribute to the kitty?
The challenge, I think that TOR conversation, you might have to dedicate probably a whole week, because we have said, and we'll repeat this, if leadership continues to sit lame duck and does not get the refinery up and running in the next 1 month or 2 months, I'm very certain in my mind that by October, there will not be any refinery again for Ghanaians. There will not be any. You have a new refinery.
Hold it, Duncan. I'm sorry I keep interjecting. You're saying by October there will be no refinery if we maintain the status quo. Why?
Well, you have a private investor, currently, just about 600 meters from TOR, putting up a much bigger refinery, right? He does not train technicians. He does not train technical hands. He will pay from the market. You have a sub-regional refinery called Dangote, coming up first quarter 2023. He is not training technicians. He will pay from the market. Out of the over 1,000 workforce you probably currently have at TOR today, your technicians are not up to 200. Some have already left. Others are simply waiting to leave because some money due them have not even been advanced. If all these upcoming refineries were to pick the technical hand, what you'll be left with will be a lot of retraining or going out there to also look for technical people. And TOR cannot afford that competition that these private refineries would definitely be given it. And these refineries are indicated. The private one around TOR in Tema is set to go on stream towards the last quarter this year. And so by the time anybody says Jack, they would have probably started, test running to come on stream altogether. And so we are simply sitting on a ticking time bomb. TOR is going to, vanish or completely go if by October we are still playing the same chess game that we're playing with it. An investor is coming, there's a proposal on the table that is workable, we won't allow it to work. There's quite a lot that you hear around. There's quite a lot that you see in proposals. Unfortunately, leadership continues to sit lame duck, while certain persons are happy to get the refinery back and running. Others seem disinterested. They don't care if it gets running or not. But that also contributes largely to the stability of your currency. Because the fuel market, like I indicated, if you are going to require $250 million every 2 weeks for importation of finished products, and a refinery could probably come in between, to reduce that number so that the refinery will now have to get maybe the money to buy crude or probably buy the crude on whatever. It is just a single entity that would now have to source for dollar. And so the market could largely stabilize if your refineries were up and running and you could get the finished product within, tank locally. Unfortunately, we are not interested. We are not interested. As I speak with you now, a lot of the BDCs would have to price the cedi to dollar above 8.5. 8.5, 8.8, some numbers I have seen. So clearly, whilst we are crying of Russia, Ukraine, but the local dynamic is simply also dragging all of us into a very big black hole. And if
I'll be coming.
It's an unfortunate situation. And then to add, whilst TOR is non-functional, you have a buffer or a strategic stockholder like BOST, who should at this point, with pinpoint accuracy, be sourcing for products, because indication on the international market is that price would get worse between now and the close of year. Yes, your buffer is not storing anything. It is not making any attempts to get any strategic stock. It will rather behave as though it were a private BDC. Where are we going from here? Clearly, there's a lot of, lapses within the system. That explains why your fuel pricing in Ghana, although Togo would also have to pick product from the international market, Nigeria will have to pick from the international market, other sub-regional countries are picking from the international market, their prices are not as bad as we find ours. The inaction.
Hold for me, Duncan. Let me bring in Mohammed Kudus, PRO with the NPA. Mr. Kudus, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
It's a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining. You've heard Duncan Amwa. He says, as far as controlling prices are concerned, we seem not to have a real strategy, that we're all over the place and that it's a real mess. And you hear exactly what he's saying, that if we don't stem the tide of some of what we're seeing, we're going to find ourselves in a very tricky situation, very dire straits. He talks about the fact that TOR, which we keep paying taxes for, is sitting there. It's not doing anything. And in fact, if we're not careful, by October, there'll be no TOR. Not that the physical structure will not be there, but that the same human resource that these people require, there's another entity just around the TOR area setting up a similar facility. He's talking about Dangote in the West African region. All of these people will be sourcing for logistics, human resource from across the board. And guess what? Some of these very people will be applying for those jobs. How do you react to that?
Let me thank you for having me. I appreciate the position of Duncan, and he actually makes a lot of sense. Because without a doubt, TOR actually plays a critical role in the whole dynamics of fuel and its access and pricing. But as you would agree with me, the issue of TOR is more of policy issue. And if we're talking policy, then it should be the issue of the ministry. Because our remit and mandate does not include what happens.
I am clear with that. I am just asking for your thoughts on the matter, whether you concur or otherwise. I know it is not under your purview, but especially as we keep coming back to this conversation and we have a TOR that is sitting, not refining, what that means is we're going to have to expend more to get the fuel products we use on the market.
Yeah, so like I said, he makes a lot of sense. Obviously, when you have the crude imported and you're going to refine it, there are other products that you could be getting out of the crude than just the finished product that we import. So, without a doubt, if you are not talking about the recruitment capacity of TOR, the fact that TOR itself would make many more of the residual products that you get out of refining a crude is actually going to be a benefit to Ghana and to all of us. So, I am with him. Anything that would be done to revamp TOR, to increase the capacity of TOR, I'm with him. And like I said, it actually makes a lot of sense.
When you look at the system, especially as you're an establishment, do we have a strategy in terms of dealing with the hike in fuel prices? Because according to Duncan, we seem to be just waiting and it's hitting us. And the least of shocks from the global market, especially on the back of the Russo-Ukrainian war, means that we'll be facing the brunt. Now, if you look at this year alone, the number of fuel price increments we have had, farmers are complaining because diesel prices are shooting up. They are shooting up again by 11.4% or 14%. We have petrol prices that are constantly going up. Do we have a strategy that you know of?
Obviously, I think we have a strategy. I might not be able to speak comprehensively to that, but I think long term, the body that has actually been established, the petroleum hub, is going to be a game changer in the long run. Because we're thinking of actually creating a hub okay, within the sub-region, so that Ghana would be a center for the dealing and trading in fuel and its related products. So obviously, in the long run, if we are able to really establish per the dreams of the petroleum hub, I think Ghana would be the good for it. So if you're talking long-term strategy, I think we have that. And maybe I would encourage you to speak to the chief executive for Petroleum Hub. Where have they gotten to? What are they up to as we speak? And then Ghanaians will be able to get an insight into their activities. Presently, I'm not sure I can speak to that because, as you rightly put it, the dynamics are not within our control. It is what happens in the international market out there. So in the immediate term, we might have to just brace ourselves with the current happenings. But long term, like I said, I think the petroleum hub, if we're able to succeed with this dream, it will be the game changer.
I find it interesting, and pardon my curiosity when you say you think there is a strategy, not that you know there is a strategy. And I do accept that some of that does not lie in your purview, but from where you sit, I believe if there were such a clear strategy, though this is technically not under your remit, you would know about what exactly the plan is. But the fact that you say you think there is a strategy leaves me with a lot of thought. But let's talk about...
No. Let me clear myself. I was only trying to be cautious because that is not an organization that I speak for. It has its own structure. It has its own personnel, and then they would. That's why I implored you to speak to the chief executive. Mr. Charles is available, and I think that when you speak to him, he might be able to give you a lot of clarity into their vision, their plans, and what they are currently up to. I didn't want to assume a certain authority that I am not. Then probably somebody could come to me for a follow-up question that I will not be able to answer. That was why I was careful in using the word think. But obviously, that strategy is there. That organization has been established. The chief executive is there. The board is there, and they are currently working.
Tell me, I know as far as the MPA is concerned, you also are aware of what measures are being put in place as far as the dollar to CD especially are concerned to ensure that the bulk oil distribution companies and others, the OMCs, can access funds at certain rates so that they don't have to keep increasing their products. But I'm looking at today, as in the last few hours, what the dollar to CD is, and it's jumped again. There's been another surge over 8 CDs, that is 8.04 to be specific, to the dollar. What does this mean for the oil marketing companies?
Okay, so like you alluded to, I think that, but for that strategy, would have either been buying fuel more because the cost for the forex would have been higher for the BDCs, or we probably would have been experiencing shortage. But as it is, the system has been created in such a way that first, it makes the dollar available to them, and secondly, it is at a competitive rate. So,
at what rate? At what rate are they purchasing the dollar currently? Can you share with us?
Oh, currently, on top of my head, I cannot.
You're saying you do not know what rates the OMCs are getting the dollar from the central government are or is?
No, so that is what I was careful. I said that it is at a competitive rate. It is not as they would have gotten it on the open market. It is.
So you're saying that they would definitely get it for less than 8 CDs and 4 pesos. That's what you're saying.
I can't speak to the specific, but I know it is lesser than what is out there. And like I said, it's an arrangement that is...
I'm sorry, I'm heckling you a bit, but how can you say you can be sure it is when you don't even know what the real figure is?
So the rationale for the establishment of that particular platform was, first of all, to make it available for them. Secondly, to actually arrest them from the soaring prices in the open market. And that is why I said competitive. What it means is that it is going to be relatively cheaper than what they would have gotten if they were to go out there on their own into the open market to source for it. So certainly it is. But, because of the fluctuation of the prices, it is not going to be easy for me to just mention a specific figure because the conditions at a particular time would determine how much it should be sold to them.
Do hold for me, Mr. Kudus. Let me bring back Duncan Amwa, Executive Director of COPEC. You deal with the OMCs as well. Not that you speak for them, but you're in constant interaction with them. When it comes to this bit to do with the prices, and we've been here before, do you have an idea how much you're getting the dollar for currently as OMCs? How much they are getting it?
That would be for the BDCs because they deal directly with
the BDCs
supplier market. And like I indicated, a lot of the numbers we have seen is between 8.5, 8.8, some getting to as high as 9.0 exchange to a dollar.
Duncan, do walk me through that again. 8, did you say, just confirm, 8.5, 8.8?
Is the least we are seeing, yes. Some 8.8, some 9.0.
That is even above the exchange rate that we have currently.
Yes, they normally would do above, the interbank rate because, like, most of them would tell you, you go to the bank, the banks don't have it. You may now have to go to the other market to source for the dollar, and it's usually higher than any interbank rate would provide. Some are actually quoting 9. I'm sure if nothing is done, by the next window, which commences July 1st, you could be doing 9.2, 9.5, even 10. So there's a challenge there. The BOG made efforts to step in. But like I indicated, $50 million intervention out of a possible $250 million requirement. Clearly, you are doing 25% of what the market, 20%, not
20%, not 25,
exactly.
20%. Right.
Yes, of market requirements. And so there's all that huge, deficit as far as the forex bit is concerned. I know if BOG had all the money that the market requires, they probably would be able to give it to them, but they also don't. And the pressure on the city simply continues unabated, though there's that intervention from BOG to stem the tide. It seemed not to be, given the sort of result you would have expected. 20%, it's not 50. Initially, we were given the thinking that they probably are able to do almost half what the requirement is, but clearly 50 million is what we know
so
being advanced out of a possible
just to clarify,
fortnight.
so that means, is this a one-off 50 million situation where the central bank makes this available to you? It's in a pool. As and when the windows and the challenges come up, you can access them, or the DBCs can access them. What is it like? Is it a one-time situation?
So every BDC has got its own, financial need or money that it needs to pay back to a supplier one way or the other. Now, if you put what they import together, you are doing between 400, 500 million USD monthly. So every 2-week window, or the first window, second window, you are likely to do about 200, 250 million. What I know from Seaboard that has been advanced to them over the period is under 50 million USD as a collective body, not for an individual. So this is available. If I have a need for 100 million and I get 10 million, it means I have to still be on the market asking for the 90 million. If I have a need for 100, I get 20. I still would have to be on the market for another 80 million that I need to push in somewhere. So BOG is intervening solid. It's okay. It's nice. It's fine on paper. But the actual impact, you might not get it at the pump immediately.
Would you say this intervention is working? Has it failed, or is it working?
It's a good step. But then again, if we would need that intervention to yield the dividend that Ghanaian consumers would wish to see, we would need to scale up a bit, because the 50 out of a possible 250, for me, is quite woeful.
So you've been talking about 50%, and now you're talking about scaling up. How much do you feel it is feasible for government to scale up to now? 20% is not working. How much do you think will
Well,
work?
you see, what we were made to accept initially was that at least half of what the BEC needs is probably been advanced to them. So if you needed a possible 250, you get 120.
25.
What it would mean is that you will not exert as much pressure on the market anymore. And so you would not be able to be prorating the effects, and for that matter, the figures I quoted, 8.5, 8.8, 9.0, that pressure could have reduced a bit. But if you're doing under 25%, the pressure would still hang. And I'm certain that if we don't scale up, it is likely that intervention would come to naught eventually.
Let's look at this juxtaposition, if you like. And we do know that currently in the United States, a liter of, fuel, gas, as they call it, is going for some, or better still, a gallon, which is about almost 4 liters, is going for $5. When you look at our situation, noting that the US has, by and large, had very low fuel prices over the decades, this is quite a bit of a high. We're still doing above that, but it is not too far away. Aren't we being too plaintive? Aren't we complaining too much on the back of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine and what we know?
I wish you had the time so we could analyze that situation.
You wish I had the what?
I wish you had the time so we could analyze the international market numbers very well. The United States averaged $3.5 before Ukraine. They averaged across most states. California would naturally do $1 higher than a lot of the other states will do. So as we speak, whilst most states are doing $5, Cali will do $6 a gallon. Granted, if I was averaging 3.5 and my price has not doubled, right, to let's say 7, I'm still within 5 and 6. What it means for the Ghanaian context, before the start of this year, we were averaging 6.7, 6.9. It came down to about 6.4 in January. 6.4. As we speak, diesel is set to cross the 13 Ghana city mark. That is double the amount. So look at it. While the dollar-paying economy is increasing at pump prices, it is increasing at a slower rate than the city-paying economy is increasing per dollar rate. So the American buying petrol today is a lot better off than the Ghanaian buying petrol today. Those are the critical elements we need to interrogate. How come fuel pricing is skyrocketing and escalating faster at the Ghanaian pump than it is doing at the United States pump? Mind you, the two economies are not same. And they don't have the shocks of the currency like we do have with ours. They might not have as high taxes as we do. In fact, some of the states have had to drop taxes for the next 7 months. Yes. But we seem not to do much with either the taxes or the currency. Neither do we seem to do much with our buffer, which is BOS. Neither do we seem to do much with the refinery, which the United States has kept all its refineries up and running. And so that might be worth interrogating profusely, because clearly the rate of increase in Ghana is quite astronomical and alarming. And I do think that we are getting to a crisis point if we do not find some minimal solutions to stem this tide. Because clearly, you wake up 2 weeks, and I'm projecting again. If nothing is done, the first window, July, we'll see another price surge because we've left the door open. There's nothing that will give you any comfort. No safety net, nothing. So whatever escalations happen with your currency, you pay for it at the pump. We've said this about 4 or 5 years ago, 7 years. Whatever escalation that will happen because of Russia attacking Ukraine, and now Russia is threatening to even, cut back supply to Europe. Once Russia does that, the simple and the most likely thing that will happen is that cargo will now be diverted from other regions to Europe. You know what that means, right?
Mm.
It means unavailability. Demand is still growing post-COVID. Price will simply go up. That is why I said earlier that in the face of global price trends, what is BOSS being positioned to do? I don't think I have the answer. They are currently behaving as though it was a private trading enterprise. So you know that between now and December, international projection puts crude to hit about $150, $160, which means that finished products will likely also go up in some symmetrical, way. What is the advantage BOSS will give to all of us? I don't know. It's scary.
Let me come to Mohammed Kudus. And it is indeed scary, especially if you consider the other aspect that I'll be getting to shortly, how this impacts transport fares. And that convention that each time fuel products go up by 10%, especially diesel, the transport unions will also increase their fares. That creates a very delicate situation for ordinary people who use public transport every day. But let me just walk this by you. We've seen this coming. In November last year, we were one of the most countries with the most expensive fuel prices on the continent. So it's nothing new. In fact, when you look at the latest, we are just edging into the top 10. The figures from March showed that we were just outside of the top 10 in terms of the countries with the highest petrol prices across Africa. But if you consider that Senegal is now selling a liter, which is the highest in West Africa, by the way, at $1.29, the equivalent. And if you look at the latest cedi to dollar pegging or ratio, it means we are just there, if not higher, which would make us one of the highest in Africa and probably the highest in West Africa. Do you foresee any changes at all? I mean, from where you sit, do you foresee we can do anything about this situation? In the meantime, I'm not talking about the long term, in the short term.
Oh, okay. So thank you very much. I think the issue is more to do with the pricing regulatory policies of respective countries. So if you're comparing countries and you don't take into cognizance the pricing policy that applies in their country, you probably would not be able to have a better appreciation. There are some of the countries who are still applying the subsidy. Ghana as a country
that are still applying what?
Pardon me?
You say there are still countries that are still applying what?
The subsidy regime.
Right.
Yes, but Ghana as a country from 2015, we decided to move out of the subsidy regime for obvious reasons. One, it was creating a lot of shortage, and two, it was creating an unnecessary backlog of debt for government, because subsidy is not something that you're able to plan and put it in your budget. It is because of the activity and behavior of the fuel prices as and when they come about. If you look at even our neighboring big brother, Nigeria, it's self-contemplated, and I think they are in the verge of moving away from the subsidy, realizing the kind of damage and hardship that sometimes the budget, the subsidy can bring to the budget and the country for that matter. So it's the pricing regime. If we decide as a country that we want to go back to the subsidy that used to prevail, you realize that our prices should certainly come down. But do we have the capacity to be able to face the consequence? One, there could be the shortage. If you remember, sometime in 2014, 2015, we had a lot of shortage at the filling stations, not because the product was not available in the world market. But because the suppliers did not have enough money to go and bring, because the subsidy that government guaranteed were not paid to them. So it is not a straightforward issue. It is like a chicken and egg. You probably would go for the subsidy and bear the consequence of it, or you would adopt this zero subsidy where you are able to guarantee a regular supply of the product. I'm not sure which one would be preferable. Is it the high cost that we're supposed to pay or the non-availability of the product? I think there are two things that we probably should be looking at. But I don't know if I heard Duncan very well. When he was speaking about the rate at which the Bank of Ghana is selling the dollar to the BDC, I thought I heard him mentioning something around $9.
I think he was talking about the open market, which got me asking as well whether they are not getting enough from the central bank. And he stated categorically that you're looking at about 250 million, and what the central government can give is only 50 million, which is just 20%, a fifth of that. So obviously they must get the rest from the open market.
Okay, so the 9% is not what the
9 CDs is not what they are getting it at from. Duncan, can you confirm what I just said? And do you know the current rate they are getting it from the central bank for?
Well, the last time we got in these figures, it was around 7.25, 7.5. But like I did indicate, that is just contributing about 20-25% to what the PDC requirement is. So the larger chunk of 80-75% is being sourced for between 8.5 to almost 9 Ghana cedi to the dollar. Not what the Bank of Ghana is giving, not the rate. The Bank of Ghana rate is obviously far lower, but the quantum that they are able to advance to the market is in the region of 20-25%. So clearly, there's a larger chunk that the BDC active players would need to source from the open market. And those are the rates that a lot of them are using, 8.8 currently.
Does that clarify for you, Mr. Kudus?
Yeah, it has. Because, okay, so the rate at which they get it from Bank of Ghana, I think is almost around the figure. But the quantum that the Bank of Ghana is able to advance to the BDC per their requirement, I'm not able to speak directly to that. I might have to take a briefing and then get back on that. But like I was saying, we need to appreciate the pricing policies of respective countries. So if you go to a country like Nigeria, you realize that because majority of their people are consumers of petrol is largely subsidized by them, not like a diesel. That is a policy that they have taken. But like I said, their finance minister actually announced that sometime this year, they are going to be scrapping the subsidy. What it means is that they are probably going to be adopting, if not the same, but a similar policy as we have it in Ghana here, where the forces of demand and supply. And
okay, so it is interesting because I have also followed the Nigerian story in recent times where they have had to give even more subsidies in the last how many months? Let's say 6 months, within the last 6 months on the back of, what has been happening across the world. And even when you talk about subsidies, Mr. Kudus, by what extent or to what measure, by what percentage of subsidy are they cutting? I think if you had a proper breakdown of that, that would also be interesting. Because what you're suggesting is they are totally scrapping the subsidies. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes, that's what they're saying. They're saying that they are trying to get a certain percentage of their population who are within a certain poverty bracket that is yet to be defined. Mm-hmm. And then some statements might be advanced to them as a way of cushioning them. But what I'm saying is that...
So it means it's not going to be a whole-scale removal of subsidies. That's basically what you're saying.
No. So if you come to Ghana, somebody would tell you that LEAP is a form of subsidy because LEAP is an identification of a certain bracket of people who are occasionally or regularly advanced with some monetary compensation by central government. So that probably can be likened to what they are thinking about. But I'm saying that whatever it is, ultimately they are also looking at scrapping a subsidy because they are appreciating the hardship that subsidy probably is bringing to their budget and the country at large. Like I said, subsidy is not something that you are able to predict, okay, because as and when the dynamics change, and you never know what would trigger the dynamics. The dynamics, it could be a pandemic, it could be an extra cost, it could be a strategy by the oil-producing countries themselves to cut down a supply just so that they will be able to arrest the reducing or falling rate of the price of the product. So all of this can happen within a space of time, probably by which time that you would have drawn your budget already. And so if you were implementing a policy regime, a subsidy policy regime, what it means is that you would have to find the money wherever you can to make up for the shortfall. But like I said, it is one of two things. Either you are going to have a shortfall or scarcity of the product because the importers might not be able to bring the product, or you would have government having to be looking everywhere for money to be able to take care of the subsidy rate.
But from where you sit, what do you think we should do? We've had subsidies in the past. I remember clearly on some utilities, electricity, water. We had to adjust some of those under the Rawlings era because they simply were not realistic. But it depends on where you peg them. So subsidies, how come some countries are using subsidies balanced with other systems and they are getting by, especially in these times of harsh economic constraints? Because guess what? There is a purchasing power parity of the ordinary Ghanaian. And without subsidies, it will get to a point, at some point in time, where people simply cannot take it anymore, where you would have hit breaking point. Transport people can't even purchase diesel and all of that. I mean, we shouldn't get there, should we?
Obviously, we shouldn't get there. That's why I'm saying that frankly, if you'd ask me personally, whatever that would take to make the product available and at an affordable rate, that would be good for me. Okay, but the issue of the capacity, maybe Minister of Finance should be able to speak to that, or government should be able to speak to that. Because if you look at our mandate, it is basically to make sure that one, the product is available, two, then the investors who actually are investing their money into that business are able to recoup their investment. So I'm for anything and everything that, first of all, would guarantee the supply of the product, and two, it will be at a competitive or affordable rate for the ordinary person out there. But we ought to be looking at the bigger picture and look at what strategy ultimately would be good for us in the long run. Not something that we probably will just put ourselves into a lot of time, maybe driven by emotion and considering the fact that we just want to meet the desire and needs of the people, and then we'll all find ourselves into a bigger problem in the long run. I think that is my personal opinion on this particular matter. So if you ask me on whether or not subsidies should be brought back or not brought back, it is not something that I speak to directly. But I think that what ultimately should be our concern is availability of the product and at an affordable rate for all of us.
All right. Before I move on to Duncan, I just want to find out from you briefly. When these increments happen, like we're seeing now, and we've interacted with the GPRTU, I think it was Imora Abbas, who said that it was inevitable. They are having conversations and they will have to increase their transport fares. Some have said that these transport unions also take undue advantage of the situation, their 10% convention and all of that. What is your take? Because in this year alone, the number of times we've had fare increments, it's becoming a bit bizarre.
I think we need a certain regulatory regime to probably be able to get the drivers' union agree to one thing and implement same together. This haphazard way of implementing their own decisions, some would say 50%, some say 50%. I'm not sure it is good for all of us as a people. So I would urge that the union state with the transport ministry be able to agree.
But they say they say they are tired of those. They say they are tired, Mohammed. They say they are tired of those. When they go and sit there, it's often a way of clamping them down and preventing them from doing this or that. That's why I think the last time they increased it without having these meetings, because they say the ministry, the other group things that they must come together with, Georgia with, are simply not facing the reality. They are purchasing it at such a high price, and you want them to leave their prices pegged at the same fares. It doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, I cannot speak directly to that, but like I said, I'm just encouraging that we should always have a dialogue, and we should all bring our ideas to the table, have an agreement, and implement same uniformly, at least for the bigger good of all of us in Ghana. I would not want to say a certain regime should be implemented for them, even if it is to their detriment, because obviously if it is not good for them, some might withdraw their services, and the transport industry would suffer. So I'm saying that they should come to a meeting. And when they go to the meeting and agree on something, they should have a uniform application of same. But the practice where one union decides to price out of what has been agreed from the rest of the union, I'm not sure it is good for all of us at all.
Right. I was even talking about the unions. The unions are there meeting with government, and sometimes they don't even want to have that because they feel they'll be, prevented from moving ahead with what they find to be realistic. But to you, Duncan, here we are again, and we're likely very soon going to see more transport fare increments. What do you think about that arrangement? Some say the transport unions are taking undue advantage, capitalizing on the situation to increase fares. But they'll also tell you, this is our reality. It's either we do this or go out of business, and we'll not be able to transport you. Your take?
I agree with Kudus when he talks of we making fuel products available as opposed to a subsidy program. I agree. We are not actually even discussing subsidy.
Right.
The same way you would need the transport services to be available as opposed to a certain restrictive regime that says with increased fuel prices, cost of parts have gone up, cost of service and lubricant price have gone up. But when they intend or increase their fares, then we have a problem with it. Fuel pricing is on a free fall. We are actually into a crisis situation. Yet, we expect these commercial transport operators to go out there, pay for the same high cost fuel, and then charge the very low fares that they were charging some months ago or a year ago, simply because when they increase fares, cost of goods and services would also go up. I think we should be fair to them. We need to be very fair to them. My fear with this whole fuel pricing escalations is that in Ghana, and per our records, per our history, when things go up, they hardly ever come back down. They hardly ever do. And so if we don't put in the structures now, if we don't put in the mitigating factors to ensure that there's some stability in pricing at the pumps, or at best, if it has to go up, it goes up by some smaller numbers. And then we go back and say we are blaming drivers for increasing their fares, then I think that we've lost, the entire argument. What is making them increase their fares is simply a function of higher and increasing cost of fuel, increasing cost of lubricants for their operations. And I think that the best the government could do for them will be to find a working formula that is scientific, a certain mathematical formula that says if X, then Y, if Y, then P, if M, then H. But we don't have that. Aside calling them to a room and say, oh, don't increase fares, don't do this. They are paying more. You've increased fuel prices at the pumps. Nobody goes to say, don't increase the fuel price. And yet, for the transport operator, the average, GPRTU person or Uber person or Trotro person, we would want to dictate for them, whereas we are not dictating to the fuel pricing situation. I don't think we are being fair to them at all.
That's a fair point you make. But let's hear. So, Mohammed Kudus, PRO of the MPA, thank you so much for joining the conversation and shedding light on what you did. But we're also joined by Godfred Abulbera, General Secretary of the GPRTU, especially as you make mention of these bits you're talking about, Duncan. It's only fitting that we get them on board as well. Godfred, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, brother. How are you?
I am doing well.
Good.
We're doing what we can with the circumstances we're in.
Yes.
So when it comes to this latest fuel price increment, and I know interacting with some of your memberships over time, a lot of you use diesel. That is also, seeing a surge in terms of pricing.
Yes.
Is that enough for you to increase your fares again? I mean, should we look forward to another price increment? And by how much?
Thank you for this morning question. I think partly you are always carrying out our problems, and then it helps ease to inform the general public. The fact is just that if government can't actually control the fuel price and the price at the pump, then the extent a strong arm to rather hold us not to increase our fares. We think it is not
Mr.
fair.
Abulbeda, could you just speak up a bit for me? I'm struggling a bit to hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Better, much better. Thank you.
Good. I am saying that we are rather a bit surprised that government cannot control the price at the pump, and yet we are being extended with a hard hand not to increase our fares. For now, it is obvious that after our meeting yesterday, we have sent out a committee to do a survey and pick up the other increment of the other components, which has to do with the exchange rate, the spare parts, the lubricants, and us as well. And then we all take a percentage calculation on all that, and then get a decision. And the ultimate answer is that fares will go up. The ultimate answer is that after having done that, that will inform us about what percentage are we going to increase. But fares definitely will go up.
Fares will definitely go up. You can confirm that.
Yes.
Are you going to be engaging the different, committees? Are you going to be engaging government on this before you go about your increment?
Shortly after today's survey, if the committee comes up with a report,
You will engage government. Hello, Mr. Abulbeda. Hello? All right. We'll try to reconnect with Godfred Abulbeda, General Secretary of the GPRTU. But Duncan, you heard it. They are definitely, they are not mincing words. They will increase transport fares. I just want to wrap with you on the conversation to do with minimal gains of some of these distribution companies, because we've also been told that because of the expense of bringing the product into the country and all of that, some of them are also being cautious about increasing their fuel prices to a certain level. It's competitive. We all know that. Do you feel that could mitigate whatever percentage increases we see, so that they would be cautious, maybe make a few pesos rather than make so much more? Do you think that is going to affect it, and which would then inure to the benefit of vehicle owners and all of that?
Before I go to that, let me chip in this. I don't think we should be encouraging the GPRTU to go to government. We shouldn't be encouraging these transport operators to go to government. Once we do that, once we force their hands, right?
But just to clarify, it is not that we are forcing their hand. It's something they've been doing over time. It's like convention.
Okay. That convention cannot hold any longer when you have deregulated fuel pricing. And like Godfrey said, if you cannot control fuel price increment, how do you justify attempts to control transport fare escalation? One is a subject or a function of the other. Why we cannot afford to have a transport system in Ghana that gets new buses every year or gets new fleet every now and then is simply because of that practice, where we call the drivers it's supposed to go up 10%. We say, oh no, just go and do 3% or 5%. The people will complain. So the investment people put into those buses, they cannot recoup them. Again, the servicing that they need to go for when due, they cannot go because they cannot even account for fuel and sales. So they endanger everybody. The challenge would have to be controlling your cedi, the local currency, which in effect will trickle to controlling fuel pricing, controlling the taxes such that finance ministers don't get a blank check just to walk to parliament and slap taxes on petrol at will. If we don't institute these things, and we would want to cut, corners and think that, okay, by restricting GPRTU from increasing their fares, we have done something. We are simply going to kill more people on the roads because these guys cannot service their vehicles to serve all of us. I do think that if we have any controls to do, get back to fixing toll. Get back to positioning bus in such a way that it can actually attract low-cost fuel. I was asking myself, why can't West Africa take advantage of the Russia situation like China is doing currently? Or we are simply aligned to the American and the European stance, and so even though Russia may be offering cheaper gas, cheaper fuel, we will still want to import from the high-cost, destinations. There's clearly a disconnect somewhere. There's clearly a need to fix somewhere. That fix should not simply be about going to squeeze the hands of these public transport operators so that they don't increase their fares and we pretend that all is well. Fuel is moving to 13 Ghana cedis. That is a crisis. We need to fix it.
It is a crisis, you say, and we need to fix it. Godfred, thank you for rejoining us. So how much of an increment, if any, can we look forward to? I mean, I'm sure your discussions, you say you are conducting the survey, but having listened to Imura Abbas and others, it is clear that you're going to do this. How much are you contemplating in terms of an increment by percentage points?
Yes, to be very honest with you,
it appears we seem to... I would just see whether we can connect one more time with Godfred. It's a crucial point to note so that we can have a fair idea, at least a range of an increment that the GPRTU, which is the biggest of these unions, would be contemplating. But Duncan, your final words on this entire conversation, this development we've been having.
Well, I would simply go back to the fuel pricing. The transport fares, I'm sure the GPRTU guys are competent enough to deal with it. But the fuel pricing bit, it is not the case that only Russia-Ukraine conflict is bringing these escalations at the pumps. It is not true. The truth is that your local currency continues to play a huge role in there. The truth is that the levels of taxes at this point, when fuel pricing is difficult to contain, you cannot continue to be charging Francis and everybody special petroleum tax because you want revenue. You cannot continue to be charging stabilization and recovery at this point. Stabilization and recovery at this point. So we simply leave the very, germane things and just look at, the other bits like transport fare increment. If they don't increase, they are still going to pay 13 cedis a litre for diesel. That is double what they paid for as of January. There need to be some fixing. And I do think that authorities should stop, going about the very things that we've gone about the very same way and expecting that something will change. If fuel jumps above 10 cedis, it simply is going to throw this economy out of sync. It has already done that. We are not looking for solution. We are simply looking to sit on our asses and simply pretend all is okay because of a Russia-Ukraine situation. Let Russia stop bombing Ukraine today. Let crude drop to $80. Petrol will not drop below 10 Ghana cedi anytime soon because it's already gone up.
Point made there. Unfortunately, time is not our friend, but Duncan, we're very grateful for your time. Executive Director of COPEC. Let me wrap with Godfred Abulbere, General Secretary of the GPRTU. Godfred, welcome back. You were making a point.
Thank you. Yeah, my response was that, from your question, we will not want to rush to increase beyond the 10%, as I mentioned earlier. But the survey that they are going to do today, and will submit the report today, will inform us as to what margin we are going to look at.
So do you not have any range in mind? I mean, on the back of the latest
when we do so, we might either be misinforming the public. But we also have one fact at the back is that when they increase more and more, we have some side effects as a result of the low passenger turnout. So we're looking at all that holistically and then see after the survey what margin will increase that will still put us in business.
So the survey is being conducted. Later today, we'll have some specifics to deal with. How soon do you feel if there's going to be an increment? I'm not asking you how much. How soon do you feel
how
this
soon will be that? We'll be fair by writing with the same survey report to the ministry, and then with a certain particular date. If by within a week a meeting is not convened, we'll come out with our new fares. And
if a meeting is convened?
Yes, but it's convened, we'll go back there and do fair negotiation.
All right.
We just don't want to sharply disconnect that convention. All right.
Godfred, my final bit to you. So Duncan Amwa made a point about you having to go to government. It's been like a convention. He says it's not really helping, that it's not the best of situations, and that we must face market realities.
Yes.
What is your take on that?
Yes, what Duncan Amwa said, it's right. But we are always having it's a two-way coin. We look at it from one angle. The fact that the ministry speaks each time as a rep for the general public when it comes to fare increment. But when it comes to fuel increment, the ministry as government takes a distant position. And then we are hard hit with the high prices. So this time around, we will still go back there. But when it is not convened, the meeting is not convened as early as possible, then we'll come back and take a decision as we did the other time.
But Duncan is basically saying there's no relevance in that. If it must be increased, it must be increased. There's no need going to interact with government in the first place. Is that something you feel maybe you should be stopping?
If government continuously don't want to meet us, and then that sort of bureaucratic system still happens, at a point we'll disconnect that system, and then it's a convention, it's not a law.
Thank you, Godfred Abulbere, General Secretary of the GPRTU. Thank you for joining the conversation this morning. We also had joining the conversation Duncan Amwa, Executive Director of COPEC, and Mohammed Kudus, PRO at the NPA. Now, this is just the first belt of our big stories. Coming up next, another thorny problem, the lack of textbooks at the basic level. Even upon all the promises we've been given, the right things have not been done. How do we expect our children to prepare for their exams and moving on to the next level? That conversation up next with Bernice Abubedu Lanza. Stay.